On today's episode of Podio Commentary, we're diving into Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the gripping 2014 sci-fi film directed by Matt Reeves. This sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes follows the intense struggle between human survivors and the intelligent ape community led by Caesar, portrayed brilliantly by Andy Serkis. We'll explore the film's production history, the groundbreaking visual effects by Weta Digital, and the powerful performances by the cast, including Jason Clarke, Gary Oldman, and Kerry Russell. Plus, we'll discuss the impressive box office success and the critical acclaim it absolutely deserved. All of that and more here today on Podio Commentary. Hey, what's going on, everyone? How you guys doing? Welcome back to Podio Commentary. Today, we're going to be diving into a film that I'm not going to lie, I'm kicking myself in the butt over waiting 10 years to have seen. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is one that I did, to be fair, actively avoid with a good reason. I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes with my girlfriend in theaters back in 2011 when it came out. And in the summer of 2014, she moved to Oregon while I was still in San Diego. We were both saving money for me to move up to Oregon later. So I thought to myself, well, I'll just wait for this one to come out, and we'll watch it later. And then you know how it is, right? Time passes, time flies by. War of the Planet of the Apes comes and goes. Still haven't seen that one either. So last week when I decided to sit down and watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I was like, okay, I need to watch Dawn in the best possible format because everyone kind of tells me that this is like the Empire Strikes Back of this trilogy. This is it. This is the gold standard of ape films. So I found my 4K copy of it buried amongst a bunch of other unopened movies, which I have a severe issue with. It is very much my addiction issue of buying movies and then never watching them. And so I found it, I unwrapped it, threw it in my 4K player, put on my Bose headphones, and I sat in bed and I watched this movie and I was absolutely blown away. Such a good film. I'm beating myself up for having taken this long to see it. So with Podio Commentary, again, I want to do this more often. I talk about that. I'm really making that a key effort here, trying to build us up on Twitter at Podio Commentary, where I do cover some news, some movie background histories, some memes, things like that. I also have the show Hollywood After Dark, which I'm trying to find a way to kind of bring back into the fold. It's all a progress. I appreciate everybody sticking with me. I love movies. I want to share movies with you guys. I'm tired of people just bashing on things constantly. I want to talk about the things that I love, and I want to get you excited to go on these journeys with me. And of course, we do have the voicemail line 323-400-4956. I'm not expecting anyone to call for this. I got to put it out there, let you guys know. You guys can call in at any time of day and leave your thoughts on the movies. And then if you follow me on Twitter or on the YouTube channel, you should be able to get an update of what films are coming next to give you guys an idea of when you can call in and leave your general thoughts and opinions. I think that's going to be a lot of fun once we get the ball rolling on that, because audience interaction is a big thing for me. And then also, if you guys want to sponsor an episode, if you want me to watch something, you can do that by patreon.com/Matt Jarbo. I'm going to have more information up there pretty soon. Or just DM me, email me, and we'll find a way to talk about it. And there will probably be a website coming at some point in time. I'm probably biting off more than I could chew by announcing that, I fully admit, but that's how I operate. I want to, when I'm passionate about something, I want to dive in. So let's talk about the format of the show, how you guys are going to be able to go on this journey with me. So today we're going to start off, we're going to talk about the history of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. We're talking about that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Box office performance, whatever cultural impact it might have had. We're going to talk a bit about the cast and the crew and what they've done and their other types of works. My thoughts on the film. If you are able to find this movie anywhere, streaming wise, we'll talk about that. And then maybe we'll do a little bit of fun things towards the end. It's a format that I'm borrowing from Jeff Rouse, Films at Home. I think he has a pretty good format there. So I'm just kind of putting that out there in the world. So all right, let's talk about this movie because it's been on my mind for days, especially Koba. Oh, as far as villain, I just want to start off by saying, as far as villains go, Koba is amazing as a bad guy because you can empathize with him, and that always makes a better villain. But let's talk about like how this movie kind of came to be. So Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is a 2014 American sci-fi film directed by Matt Reeves, written by Mark Baumbach, Rick Jaffa, and Amanda Silver. Now, Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver wrote The Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and they'd already written this movie before Matt Reeves came on board. But Reeves wanted to go back in and rework on it. He really wanted to tell a different story. This story follows the human survivors battling to stay alive in the wake of the pandemic. This would be the simian flu, while Caesar tries to maintain control over his expanding ape community, potentially leading to an all-out war between apes and humans, which is interesting how they kind of frame it like that. But in many ways, it's about fear of the unknown, or fear of lack of power, or hatred. And in this case, it really is about hatred. It's Koba and his hatred of humans versus Caesar and his love of humans, or his ability to see the good in humans, which is something that a lot of the apes like Koba simply were not able to see. Now, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes went into development shortly after the success of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So back in 2011, 20th Century Fox did announce a sequel, with Andy Serkis confirmed to return as Caesar, and Rupert Wyatt was slated to direct. However, a year later, in September of 2022, Wyatt departed the project due to concerns over the tight production schedule. This actually led to the hiring of Matt Reeves just a month later, in October 2012, who had previously directed films like Cloverfield and Let Me In. Cloverfield is one of my absolute all-time favorite movies. I own it in every available format that I can find it. And Let Me In was a good remake of Let the Right One In, even if I do prefer Let the Right One In more. But I think it was a good contemporary remake, especially for American audiences. Now, Reeves was brought on board with the condition that he would deliver the film in time for the scheduled release date. He requested permission to rewrite the existing script and to focus more on Caesar's story in the early stages of ape civilization, believing that this approach would provide a richer narrative. The studio actually agreed, and Reeves, along with screenwriters Mark Baumbach, Rick Jaffa, and Amanda Silver, did set to work on crafting a story that would then dive deeper into these characters and these themes that were introduced in the first film. Because the first movie very much set the stage, right? The idea of the first movie ultimately was the road to hell is paved in good intentions. Because the entire point of the movie was James Franco's character was trying to solve and cure Alzheimer's. And as a result of that, and as a result of capitalism run amok, you very much have this virus breakout, right? This lab leak, if you will. And we've kind of dealt with that in a number of other ways in the previous 10 years since this movie came out, which did kind of make me look at it a little bit differently, of like what would happen. And so when they were, getting ready to make this movie, they brought in, obviously, the cast. This would be Jason Clarke, Gary Oldman, Kerry Russell, Toby Kebbell as Koba, who I don't think gets enough praise for that, and Cody Smith-McPhee. None of the original cast members returned, with the exception of Andy Serkis as Caesar. It is alluded to, I think, with Matt Reeves or somebody involved in the production did make the claim that James Franco and Freida Pinto's characters from the first movie succumbed to simian flu and died as a result. So I don't quite know. I would argue that, like, if they are, going to have survivors, you could maybe make the, decision later on to kind of bring them back in. I made a joke on Twitter about how the success of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is probably going to resurrect James Franco's career, because everyone is rushing back to watch these movies. And he was a great part of the first film. And so I'm really wondering what's going to happen with that. But James Franco did say that in 2012, when Rupert Wyatt left the production, that he was probably out as well. He didn't think he was coming back for the sequel because the director went with it. And to be fair, it takes place 10 years later. It didn't need James Franco. You know what I mean? It didn't really need any of that at all. But I think that it was still an epically powerful film, especially dealing, Andy Serkis was allowed to act in a way that, in my opinion, was absolutely Oscar worthy. Toby Kebbell, who did Coda, Oscar worthy. The performance, the mocap, the visual effects, I mean, it was absolutely amazing. This movie was produced by 20th Century Fox in collaboration with Churnin Entertainment. The visual effects were handled by Weta Digital, obviously renowned for their work on Lord of the Rings and Avatar. There's no greater visual effects company out there than Weta. Like no one comes close in so many ways. And I always still feel like they just kind of get the short end of the stick, right? In regards to like being the GOAT, because they are effectively the GOAT. We can argue that they are absolutely the GOAT. The filming commenced in April of 2013 and lasted until July 2013. Filming was in Vancouver Island of British Columbia. This was chosen for its natural landscapes and that it resembled the film setting. Remember what I talked about with Rise of the Planet of the Apes? Is that they went into like the redwoods, but they weren't in the redwoods in the sequel. Is kind of funny. They weren't even in the redwoods in the first one, but they just called it the redwood. You know, the redwoods are far, far, far north from San Francisco, given the proximity that they were to the city in the first movie. But whatever, you know. But again, here it's 10 years later, and they've definitely like built it out, you know, have their homes and whatever. They also shot a little bit of this in New Orleans at the former Six Flags New Orleans amusement park, which was used for scenes depicting the post-apocalyptic human settlement. Now that I think about it, I can kind of see it because like it looked like it was run down. It looked like it was abandoned. It looked like it was just gone. And it really added to the aesthetic of those scenes. And now I want to go back and rewatch it specifically to start like really looking at the background scenes when they're showing the human settlement in San Francisco. The film itself was scheduled for release initially of May 23rd, 2014. This would have been like Memorial Day, but then it was pushed back to July 18th, 2014, and ultimately moved up to July 11th, 2014. Look, I'm not going to lie here when I say this, having it be a Memorial Day release, 2014. I don't really remember what came out that Memorial Day, but Memorial Day used to be big. And then for a couple years, it just wasn't big. It wasn't until 2019's like Aladdin, surprisingly, where it actually had a decent uptick. Like Solo came out the year before in 2018 and it just kind of crashed and burned, which is such a bad thing because it's such a great movie. But like Memorial Day used to be the biggest of the big. You guys got to remember, I spent 12 years almost working at a drive-in movie theater in San Diego. The very first summer I worked there, Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes came out. And so I was working there again in the summer of 2014 when Dawn of the Planet of the Apes came out. And of course, I saw bits and pieces of it here and there, but I really avoided the film, which was fantastic because then 10 years later, when I sat down to enjoy it, I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then anyway, they released it. It did pretty well. It grossed over $710 million worldwide, making $208.5 million in the United States. 500.3 million in other territories, making it the highest grossing film in the franchise and the 8th highest grossing film of 2014. So you can understand why Fox was like, hey, let's go ahead and greenlight a third movie. But critically speaking, the movie did quite well. 91% Rotten Tomatoes, 79% on Metacritic. It was praised for Reeves' directions, the visual effects, performances, Michael Giacchino score, action sequences, and emotional depth. It did win some awards. It got a lot of nominations. It did get an Academy Award nomination for best visual effects. I forget what it lost against, but the fact that it lost is just crazy to me. The work that Weta did was just absolutely wild. But this movie, again, it's a sum of all of its parts. It really is. It has great direction, a great story, great visual effects, but it had a great cast there as well. Obviously, Andy Serkis as Caesar. Jason Clarke as Malcolm, Gary Oldman as Dreyfus. This was a big draw for a lot of people, by the way. Gary Oldman in the movie was like seen as, oh my God, they got Gary Oldman, because this was right after the Dark Knight trilogy where he was, Commissioner Gordon, right? So a lot of people were very much like excited to see what Gary Oldman was going to do. And honestly, he didn't have that big of a part in the movie. Not as big as I think people thought he was going to have, especially not me. You have Kerry Russell as Ellie, Toby Kebbell as Koba, and Cody Smith-McPhee as Alexander. You've also got Karen Conoval as Maurice. Interesting thing about Karen Conoval, she was Maurice in all three films, but she also was the court clerk that had a bit of a terse interaction with James Franco's character in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. That threw me off at first when I was doing some research for this, because I saw her name pop up. And I saw her picture pop up and I saw it next to Maurice. And I'm like, wait, that was the court lady from Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And then I clicked on it and I saw, oh, she did double duty. To quote Lunch Lady Doris, I get 2 paychecks this way. That's a great way to go about it. Anyway, One of the key things about this movie is that it does explore themes of like leadership, trust, and struggle for coexistence between the humans and the apes. Part of the issue with that, though, is the humans want to reestablish order, and the apes already have order, and they're fearful of any kind of cohabitance. And that's a lot of the issues of the movie. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about my thoughts on the film. Like, I've already been praising this movie completely. Like, it is just a compelling drama. And I keep talking about this in these kind of movies, and it always seems to get like laughed at by, I think, American film goers predominantly, where I'll talk about things like Godzilla X Kong or Godzilla v Kong. And I'm like, these are gigantic kaiju movies. I want there to be a good human story. Human doesn't necessarily mean the human actor, but just a good dramatic story that everybody can relate to. In this case, Caesar is very much in charge. Everyone loves him. Everyone trusts him. He's been in charge for 10 years. He is the alpha. And yet he still has that soft spot for humans. And so when they come across the humans, this being, Caesar's son and Rocket's son, Ash, then they end up, having this confrontation because one of the guys ends up shooting Ash in the arm because he's afraid. And then that creates the conflict. And this is where Koba's like, humans are bad. Humans are mean. Humans did this to me. I hate them. And then Caesar's like, I understand that. He's like, a show of strength must be shown. And he's like, it will. So he gets everyone up. They don their war paint. They ride their horses down into San Francisco, confront the humans at the settlement, tell them to stay out of the wilderness, give them back the lost bag that the Alexander had dropped as a sign of good faith, while also showing strength, right? It is very much a peace through strength type moment, which I thought was really good because the humans were like, what is going on? These apes are organized. Like, I had no idea. And they're riding horses, and Caesar is kind of speaking. And obviously it is very much an issue with them because they don't know what's going on. And that kind of uncertainty was really, really good because at this point, the humans are now afraid. They know that the apes are organized. They know that the apes are aware of them, and they need to get power because that's how they reestablish their society. And if they have to go in and kill all the apes in order to get up to the hydroelectric dam, they'll do it. Not that they want to, but they feel that it's the necessity that they have to. And I can kind of understand that from just, again, like a perspective of society where they absolutely are going to have to try to find a way to work together. If not, war will happen. And that's kind of what Malcolm, Jason Clarke's character, does. He heads up there on his own to seek out Caesar, to plead with Caesar, to let them rebuild, to let them have access to this, only for the purpose of getting power and staying in San Francisco. And Caesar, again, he's sympathetic to the humans. He doesn't think all of them are bad. He didn't want to kill anyone. In the first movie, he told them, like, don't kill. Draco Malfoy's character, or Tom Felton, sorry, his character dies from his own stupidity when Caesar was trying to do to him, or do unto him what was done to him, right? The golden rule kind of played an effect there. And of course, then the overreaction with the cattle prod ended up killing him. So Caesar doesn't want there to be battle. He doesn't want there to be conflict, but he does understand that, like, this is almost a necessity at times. And it's through this that the humans discover an armory in San Francisco where there's a lot of guns, and they're testing. I thought this part was kind of interesting, where you had a couple of these guys and they're testing the firearms to make sure that they're working. They're shooting at an armored vehicle. And then Koba, completely untrusting of the humans, sneaks in and sees this, and then gets caught and plays dumb because Koba was kind of like, remember in the first movie, he knows what the game is, right? He understands how to play it in order to deceive the humans well enough in order to get what he wants out of it. He's very smart. And his scenes with these guys were the most tense scenes in the movie because, you kind of know what he's going to do, but you're just waiting for him to do it. And then he just plays that dumb ape so well. And then he eventually gets the guns and he just kills them both. And he's just so stone cold about it. It's like, oh my God, this is where, like, look, when we talk about people who have these stunt performers and these mocap actors and these voice actors doing this visual work, and them not getting recognized by the Academy for that work is such a shame. It's absolutely such a shame. It's one of the reasons why I just don't trust the Academy, because it's just so terrible. But Koba was so compelling because Koba was just, I don't trust them. I don't trust Caesar now that he is showing leniency to them. He's defending them in one instance. He's making Koba look weak in front of the other apes. Koba can't stand that. Koba then decides to kill the king. Basically Brutus. He becomes Brutus to an extent, right? Or well, the Senate, let's be fair, the Senate, someone's going to correct me on that one. The Senate. And he fakes the assassination, or he assassinates Caesar, tries to, in order to then frame it on the humans to get the apes to go to war in order to take out the humans. And this part was, I love this part because the apes storm the armory, steal all the guns. They have no idea how they work. And yet when the battle commences at the settlement and they're opening fire at the humans, I'm like, after like about probably 30 seconds, those guns are going to be out of ammunition. Because we never see an ape reload. And they're never carrying ammo packs, like ever. But so I thought that was kind of, whatever. Again, suspension of disbelief is kind of the way I look at it, right? And so they're doing all this. They're attacking all those guys. And then, they make their way through because they are physically stronger and they have the ability to climb and do all those things. And they're way more organized and stuff. And that part was really, really, really cool. What then I enjoyed about that is Caesar is at this point trying to make his way back to the city, right? Malcolm they had found him. They patched him up. They got his son to him. And then his son goes and helps get Maurice and Rocket and the other really loyal apes that are very loyal to Caesar, because Koba understands that there can't be dissension in the ranks. Remember, early on, as they're taking over the settlement, one human defies the apes by hitting one with like a line divider or something it's called, right? I forget what it's called. But he, hits one. And then Koba tells Ash to kill him. And Ash says, no, Caesar wouldn't like this. And so then Koba grabs Ash, Rocket's son, by the way, drags him up the steps, grabs him and throws him off the balcony down like 3-4 flights and kills him as a sign of don't F with me. I'm in control now. Like just the meme from Captain Phillips, I'm the captain now, like that whole thing. And what I don't get about that is like, there was like really kind of like no upset that Ash died, right? Ash had a bad time in the movie. He gets shot in the beginning and then he refuses to kill. And then he gets murdered as a result of that, right? But the whole point is that their mantra is ape, no kill ape. That's the whole thing. Ape, no kill ape. All right. And in this point, Koba breaks that. And everyone sees it, but they're all afraid of him because they follow the alpha. And at this point, the king is gone. Caesar's allegedly dead at the hands of the humans. He's using the anger and the fear and everything else to manipulate everything. And it's so good. It's so well done. And then he locks the humans up in cages, right? Doesn't kill them, which I thought was really interesting. He doesn't kill them. He locks them in cages like he was locked in a cage. Because in my mind, I'm looking at that and I'm going like, okay, obviously Koba here he hates humans. And he would eventually kill all of them, make no mistake, but he wanted to torture them first. And that was like, again, you can kind of empathize and sympathize because he's been so heavily attacked and so heavily, experimented on and tortured that all those years that he's just got that built up hatred, right? And it is really violence begets violence, hatred begets hatred. Those kind of mantras really do play out in this film, and beautifully so. Now, as we get to the climax of the movie, Malcolm is helping the apes get back, right? Caesar and his guys get back. And then he runs across Dreyfus and the other guys, and they're underground, and they've retreated underground, and they are planning to destroy the tower that all the apes are in by using C4 as a way to kind of save humanity, eradicate the ape, so on and so forth. And here is where Malcolm is trying to figure out a way to get them to not do it, to give Caesar time to fight Koba, to set things right so they can live peacefully. Almost, my vibe on this one is I kind of get like the John Smith Pocahontas vibe, if I'm being honest with you. A little bit of that. Little bit of that. But here he's sitting there and you can just tell he's conflicted about what he has to do. And so eventually he just kind of gets up nonchalantly, walks over, grabs the machine gun, cocks it, and then points it at Dreyfus and is like, you need to not do this. You need to give him time. But by this point in time, the humans have watched the apes attack, right? Their viewpoint on the apes are like the apes' viewpoints on the humans. It's us or them. And none of it's going to change. None of it's going to change in that moment. And then you hear, Gary Oldman talk about how they made, it doesn't matter. They made contact. They finally got the power. They made contact with the outside world. Marines, military, Navy, Army, Air Force, whomever, somebody is coming. It doesn't matter. And then he just says, I'm saving humanity. And he blows all of them up with Malcolm able to get away. Whatever, But what I love is that the other two guys that were there had no idea that he was going to take them out with him. And in the process of that, it goes off. Koba and Caesar are on top of the tower and they're fighting. And it's a brutal fight because Caesar's still wounded from the gunshot, but Koba also gets injured. And then Caesar just starts bam, 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 just taking him out. And everyone's watching and that Caesar's going to win, right? But at the end, Koba is kind of like dangling off the edge. He's dangling off the edge and he is, asking for help, right? He's asking for help, and he says, ape, don't kill ape, right? And then Caesar goes, ape, and then lets him fall. And then, obviously everything else collapses and whatnot, right? And so it's so interesting because at that point, Caesar realizes that Koba is not an ape. He has become what he hates. He's become the humans in this particular regard. And Caesar makes a point to that a little bit later, I think, we're talking to Malcolm. And you could tell Caesar didn't want that. He wants to be a good leader. He wants to live in peace. And so Malcolm thinks, well, now it's over. You guys can go back to the mountain. You guys can go back to the forest. And Caesar's like, no, it's already too late. Like the bell's been rung, so to speak. War is coming. War is coming. And then he tells Malcolm to get out of there, take your people and go. Because what's going to happen next is something that we have to see through to the end. Good, bad, or the other. We have to see through to the end. And that's such a compelling ending to the movie. Because obviously, yeah, war is going to tie into that. It's going to completely move on from that point. But it's it is, he's fully aware of his actions have now caused this to happen. Or rather his inaction, his being too trusting of his friend is what I think really kind of killed it. So in that particular moment, he's like, oh my God, we are in this position where we now have to react to what's going to happen. And we are now going to have to be that way. And I just thought it was so well done. I'm like, oh my God, man. Your people, I just want to quote Jar Jar, you saw people gonna die. Kind of what it felt like. And then at the end of the movie, it's the dawn of the new day, the dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And obviously, it's metaphoric, obviously. But it's so good. It's so good. So well done. Performances were amazing. The motion capture was top notch. Everything was great. I'd argue probably the only real bad CG was in the beginning of the movie when they were tracking down the elk for food. That was really about it. Other than that, it was just a compelling 2 hours. Fast paced, but good paced enough. I mean, if I had to complain about anything, I think the human settlement element of it was largely kind of underrated, maybe, or undercooked. Kirk Acevedo's character was interesting because, he was the bigoted one. He was the one full of hatred because he doesn't know, fear of the unknown. And as a result of that, he ends up being the patsy. One thing I thought was interesting is the people that were up there on the mountain when Caesar was killed, because when Caesar's shot and killed, they had got the power back on. They were kind of having this victory feast or whatever. You had, Malcolm, and you had Ellie, and you had Alexander, and you had a couple of the other humans that were there. And then when Caesar gets shot and they watch this, and then also Koba has another ape light fire to the home, and you start seeing the chaos, Maurice just looks at them and goes, run. And they book it, and they all book it down the mountain. And yet the two other guys that were there, we have no idea what happened to them. They're just gone. So whether they lived or died, we have no way of knowing. I mean, sure, it's largely inconsequential, but it's little things like that, those little open-ended questions that as a person with OCD who likes to see things through beginning, middle, end, I like to get that. I like to get those lore dumps. So maybe someone will tell me at some point. Again, like when I was doing the research on this and I read the whole thing about how, James Franco and Frida Pinto's character ended up basically being murked from simian flu. I mean, sure, it's a piece of lore that I like, but at the same time, part of me is like, yeah, all right, okay, yeah, all right. I'd prefer to see it, but there's a scene in the movie too where like Caesar finds the old video recorder at the house, and he looks at some footage that was cobbled together from deleted scenes from Rise of the Planet of the Apes with James Franco. And that was like an uncredited cameo appearance. And as far as I know, James Franco didn't sign off on that, but I'm sure he didn't care. When you're in such a critically acclaimed movie and you have a cameo that you had no part of really knowing you're going to be in, I mean, are you going to care? Probably not. But it was a good little moment in order to just kind of establish like that Caesar has an understanding of the goodness of humans. And he even says, he's all like, father was a good man, like you are a good man. And like, because again, you see Caesar and he has this kind of duality vision, right? He's got the, 1 foot in the human world where he lived for 8 years. And then, for the other 10 years, he's been out in the woods being the leader. So he's got this compassion and empathy and strength. And he's such a compelling leader and one that you just inherently like. He does not intend for anything bad to happen. And it's just great. It's great. Freaking love it. I freaking love it. Can't wait to watch it again. Can't wait to watch War. That's what I'm watching tonight. And of course, I'll be talking about that next. What you guys got to remember is like this movie, according to like a lot of the overall impressions of the movie, it does stand out as a significant achievement in modern science fiction. It did combine cutting edge technical prowess with very compelling storytelling. One of the reasons why Matt Reeves is just amazing. And it definitely built upon Rise of the Planet of the Apes while setting up War for the Planet of the Apes as being part of this, what some have called, like, as far as trilogies are concerned, just a modern epic trilogy. And they're not wrong. They're absolutely not wrong. If you want to get this movie, you can find it on 4K. They have the triple pack. It's usually on sale. I think I bought it for under $20 for all 3 films. It's excellent transfer. It's a great trilogy for that price. It's streaming on Hulu as well as Disney Plus. As I mentioned on the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, in order to promote Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, they put out they have a whole section of all the other Apes movies that are on there. So if you want to go watch all those other 8 movies, you can. Disney Plus has got them. And and the movie's pretty much available to find anywhere. This is not a hard movie to find. So let's just chat a little bit about some of the fun little facts of the film you may not know about. The orangutan Maurice was actually named after Maurice Evans, who played Dr. Zaius in the original film. In the movie, there's a scene where Gary Oldman is looking at an iPad and finding photos of his kids, and he's crying because obviously this is the first time he's seen his kids in so long. And he's crying. And those are actually his real life children. The motion capture was all actually done on exterior sets because the actors were very sweaty and were very smelly. And apparently Judy Greer was Cornelia in the movie. Like, that's a new one on me. What IMDb says is that it's Judy Greer. And I'm like, she had like Judy Greer, like Fern Mayo Judy Greer. And she's got like nothing in the film. I like Judy Greer, so it's kind of weird. There's a novel called Black Hole by Charles Burns, which is shared by Alexander and Maurice, which parallels the film's themes about outcasts. The film is the first in the franchise to feature the F word, because I know you can't have an F word in an ape movie, folks. Also, Andy Serkis's company Imaginarium handled some of the ape casting process and early tests. Makes sense. He's probably the greatest mocap actor we've ever had. Sign language in the movie was based upon the American Sign Language with its own unique expressions created specifically for the film, which made sense because they had to find a way to really convey the sign language as well as nonverbal expression through emotion. 90% of our communication, I think, is like nonverbal. So like in this specific instance, they had to very much do that. And then the other thing here is Matt Reeves had previously worked with Kerry Russell on the TV show Felicity, which J.J. Abrams produced. I think Matt Reeves, was he the creator of Felicity? I'm not too sure, but either way, this was an excellent, epic movie. One that I am very anxious to get your thoughts on. So please leave a comment here on YouTube. Find me on Twitter at Podio Commentary. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. I look forward to hearing them. I'll talk to you guys later when I cover War of the Planet of the Apes. Have yourself a great day. Thank you again for listening. Remember, movies are here to unite us through storytelling, laughter, and obviously love. So I love you guys lots. I'll talk to you later, and peace out.